Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. It is June 2nd, 2020. Hope your day is going well. We have Tropical Storm Cristobal down in the Bay of Campeche. First time that we've reached the third named storm this early since records have been kept going back to 1851. You're going to hear a lot about that. And yes, it was supposed to be a busy hurricane season. And believe it or not, this kind of early season activity isn't necessarily a sign of what's to come, because the development that we have seen lately is not related to deep tropical development that we get in August, September, and October. However, that being said, if this continues on and we start to see tropical waves develop out over the open Atlantic that come off of Africa, if we get an early Cape Verde season, as we call it, then I'll start to get concerned that we're going to have a season perhaps that's more than we can handle. All right, so that being said, let's take a look at what's going on out there. This is the visible satellite animation, courtesy of our friends over at weathernerds.org, and you can see clearly down in the southeast Bay of Campeche here, Tropical Storm Cristobal, and it's trying its best to organize. It came from the leftovers of Tropical Storm Amanda from the East Pacific, and that center kind of milled around, finally got back out over water. And here we are, and it's strengthening slowly, very steadily, bringing heavy rainfall. You can see some of those bands there over the Yucatan. There's a very strong band right there. The center of circulation is tucked in here somewhere, and rainfall is going to be the number one issue for the time being, because this is not going to rapidly intensify, more than likely, although that is an impressive There's another band on the western side. It's trying. And the water temperatures down here, as I'll show you in just a moment, are very warm. Upper level winds are favorable overall. It's early June. This is the area that is climatologically favored. So, except for land interaction, this should continue to strengthen quite steadily. But again, the main headline for now is the very heavy rainfall for southeastern Mexico and elsewhere, continuing in Central America, associated with the overall larger envelope of energy that's down here with that Central American gyre that this spawned from in the eastern Pacific. So here's the 5-day forecast from the National Hurricane Center, and you can see it's a very slow-moving system there, making that turn, and then it stays just on or just off the coast. That's going to make all the difference. We'll talk about that in our keys to the game segment here as we wrap up, what to look for. And then the Hurricane Center forecast has it moving northward up into the open Gulf of Mexico in the general vicinity of Louisiana. Now that doesn't mean that's where it's going to end up. So, a lot of people are going to be watching this for obvious reasons, got a lot of questions, and with everything else going on in our lives, we don't really need this. Well, storm systems like this do not care. They don't have any kind of a memory. They're not out to get us. It may seem that way. So the best thing you can do now, if you live, from the Florida Panhandle all the way over to the Texas coast, you're in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, the Florida Peninsula too, but I really doubt that would come into play. But just pay attention to it. If someone said that there's a large animal out in your backyard that's kind of dangerous, keep an eye on it. You don't have to panic and hide under the mattress. It's just out there. Be aware of it, and that's the situation here. It's going to be a slow process. That's the first thing that we know. Let's look at what we know. Slow process overall. It's not racing through the tropics on a beeline for any one particular location. The other thing that we know, as I've mentioned, it's a big rainmaker down in southeastern Mexico, parts of the Yucatan, and that vicinity. That's another fact that we know. We also know, looking at data, that it's well organized. We saw the satellite picture there. The vorticity signature of it is also quite well defined. I talk about this a lot. And here you go. There's that classic round bundling of the energy down there associated with the focusing of all that heat around the low pressure center. That's what you look for. So we'll continue to monitor that. It's going to look healthier and healthier on satellite imagery, I bet. And it'll continue to strengthen. So we know that. It's got a good environment to work with. Another piece of that puzzle, water temperatures. The storm is located down here, and the water temperatures, as you can see, are 28 29, almost 30 degrees Celsius, and we're talking 82, 83, 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's got plenty of warm water to work with. What about if it does, in fact, come up into this direction over the next few days? The water temperatures in here are also plenty warm to support additional development. Over 26 degrees Celsius, which is about this color and on up the scale. It's only in the extreme northeast Gulf where water temperatures are still marginal. So it has plenty of humidity, plenty of fuel to work with, no doubt about that. So, yes, we do want to watch this, anywhere along the Gulf Coast, because it's going to be slow moving. Now, before I get into going over what the GFS, this is the Euro, what the Euro is showing, and we could show models all day, but I want to try to keep these as brief as possible. There are going to be, because it's slow moving, lots of ramifications in terms of how slow it moves. And that's part of the keys to the game here. What is the end game for this system? It's going to be dictated early by the movement. So it goes without saying that if it moves over land down there in southeast Mexico and stays over land for any amount of time, it'll be disrupted and it'll be harder for it to organize later. Maybe. Keep this in mind. And I've seen other forecasters talk about this. So it's not like something that I came up with. You can just observe over time and you can figure this out yourself. I want you to keep this in mind. If it were already a powerful hurricane that made landfall with a well-developed core, let's say it was 130 mile per hour, powerful hurricane, everything was very, very symmetrical. You know what I mean? Like that finely tuned engine, and then it ran aground. That becomes unraveled very quickly. It goes off that peak potential that it reached, apparently, down to being pretty disheveled. And then if it starts moving towards the United States, the clock starts ticking, but it really doesn't have that much time to get back to that state of 130 miles per hour. We saw that with Hurricane Isidore in 2002. Powerful hurricane, dipped into the Yucatan Peninsula from the north, hung out in that area for a couple of days, finally moved off and moved into Louisiana, and it just took it a while to come back, and it ran out of time, fortunately for Louisiana. So the longer, there's two things here. The longer this takes down in the Bay of Campeche, the more odd things can happen. Not necessarily odd, but it's going to be hard to pin it down. You might have a run where it's more towards Texas. You might have a run where it's farther to the east. So don't worry about days 4, 5, 6, 7 right now. Let's look at the first 3 days, not 3 hours, the first 72 hours. That's the first part. The second part, if it hasn't reached nearly its potential, and remember, those water temperatures that I showed you down here are very warm. And if it does not organize and become a hurricane over those warm waters, and it doesn't stay over land for a long time, and there's not really any indication that it's going to sit down here for days, it may come in, kind of graze the coast, and then pop back out. It hasn't reached anywhere near its fullest potential yet, and it can still do so en route along this corridor, assuming that's what the corridor is, and it can still strengthen. So we got to watch this closely. It's one of those fine line things, you know what I mean? It could go either way, and we could be looking at a sloppy Barry type situation. Of course, Barry last year formed from a different entity altogether, but the difference is a tropical storm that we have to, brace for and, use common sense to get by versus a dangerous hurricane that causes evacuations. I don't know the outcome yet. I don't, or I'd tell you. Nobody knows the outcome. But the potential is there. Unlike Barry last year, this is a different setup to begin with. The large Central American gyre pattern down across Central America is what helped to spawn this out of the Eastern Pacific. Barry formed from some storms that came down and milled around over here and then worked their way back this way. Remember, it was a completely different setup. All right, that being said, what is the prognosis here going forward from the Euro? Well, clearly you can see there's our storm right there. There's Cristobal. And you've got your red area in here. These are representing your heights in the atmosphere. And this is enough to kind of keep it down there, kind of pressing it down. The pressure pattern is such that this just can't come north right now. So we go through time, 24 hours out. Again, this is the Euro from the 12Z run today. This is the run initialized this morning, what we call the 12Z run. 24 hours out, Wednesday morning. There it is, right there, straddling the coast, maybe onshore, hard to say. The heights overall relax a little bit, and so it's just going to kind of get stuck there. It needs something to pop it loose, some kind of a force to act upon it to pop it loose. 48 hours out, no return force, if you will. You got this, the heights are higher over here, the heights are higher over here, but lower in this alleyway, but nothing to nudge it in any one direction. It's just kind of stuck. All right, so by 72 hours, look what happens. The heights begin to build back in from the east, and that starts to act on this to help nudge it in a northerly direction. It also is butting up against building heights over the southwest in the western United States, this big heat dome that's going to try to set up. And so the only way for it to go at this point is northward. That's 3 days out. Friday morning. Saturday morning, heights are building in not only to its east, but even back to its south here. So now it's got a boost coming in from the south to kind of kick it to the north. But there's some indications that it might not get to do that very quickly because heights are building to its north. You see, it gets crazy. Well, not really crazy, but it's not a simple solution. That's 4 days out, Saturday morning. Sunday morning, heights are building again to its south. It's got pretty good momentum coming in. Heights are building to its north, so it's going to probably get blocked and make a westerly turn at some point. And it's strengthening. European model here showing it down to 988 millibars. Finally, by day 6, it's onshore in this model run in Louisiana, kind of like where Barry came in last year. And you see what's happening. The heights all around it to the east help to kind of move it in that direction. There's nothing that shows me in this model run that we're seeing like a huge area of high pressure build over this area to just keep it trapped down here forever. And it just dissipates. And that, for the United States interests, is the concern. If I can get the camera to come back. Hello. That's the concern. It doesn't just get buried down in Central America or Mexico and rain itself out. That can still happen, but we're not seeing indications of that happening right now. So, yeah, we're going to want to watch this along the Gulf Coast. Of course, I would be ready to go with my field team. I've already spoken with Greg Nordstrom, and he is in Gulfport. Greg from Mississippi State University, a good friend of mine. He would be going with me potentially, and we've got other field crew that are available as needed. We're all trying to figure it out with our lives and busyness and whatever. But yes, it is something from an intercept perspective that I am interested in. Of course, there could be impacts from this along the Gulf Coast. What those impacts are, we'll just have to wait and see. All right, as a reminder, I'm on Twitter, of course, at HurricaneTrack. YouTube is also HurricaneTrack, Hurricane Track. That's the brand. And we are supported by our fine patrons, crowdfunded via Patreon. Check it out sometime, patreon.com/HurricaneTrack to learn more about the benefits of supporting my efforts through crowdfunding. There are good benefits. You'll like it. It's more than just funding me. You'll see. Anyway, I will be back, obviously, talking about this. Because of our patrons, I'm able to do this. And we'll keep a close eye on it and see how things evolve. All right? Have a great rest of your day. And it's Tuesday, right? Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.